Jay from Nomad Clan, thank you so much for joining me. A year since our last conversation, and it's fair to say quite a lot has been going on then, both artistically in the world and kind of personally in your world as well, really.
Yeah, that's shocking that it's a year. That's actually really just thrown me. I can't believe that. Flipping vortex.
Really, yeah. How has the last year been for you?
It's well, I suppose for everyone on some level, it's been quite a year of adaptation. You know, like we've just, I guess, emerging out of something that was, completely unheard of, I suppose, and as forced like a whole bunch of people to really sort of change and adapt in many ways. So I'd say my journey through the pandemic has been completely nuts. It was like going from full speed Nomad Clan, run as fast as you can in the direction of any work that's going that you want, and just work, 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 work. No time, no space for anything. Then suddenly, everything stopped, and I'm kind of glad. I know there's been, for many people, it's been terrible. For me, on a personal level, it's been one of the most significant chapters of my life, like full stop, this far, full stop. I can't imagine that I will have a year as pivotal as 2020 ever again. And I think that's a good thing, but also at the same time I'm like, oh, 2020, like it was just chaos. But I suppose the taking the foot off the gas opened up a whole heap of time for reflection and personal development, and really gave me, for the first time, the focus to look at my own well-being, which sounds like quite a dramatic statement, to be honest, but I think it's safe to say it's pretty true. So like I think we were burning the candle on every side in Nomad Clan, be it party, be it work. We just didn't know when to stop. And I know personally for me, I was quite addicted to that pace. So it was quite refreshing to suddenly stop, but also it was terrifying. So I guess firstly, well, me and Haley, departed ways in our relationship, which, been a long time coming. I think, we kind of lost each other in the chaos of work, in the pace. And it seemed like it was kind of a natural fizzle, but of course we remain friends, and we've just painted like the biggest piece in our portfolio yet, and we're getting on better than we ever have, really, I would say. And that's one thing. As a result of that, I moved to the middle of nowhere, to a little village back near my hometown, and spent an unholy amount of hours hiking, is how to put it, and alone.
Some lovely photos from those hikes as well, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty spoiled, to be honest. Like this place is insane. It's like, well, it was a hidden gem. It's grown in popularity, I think, because people, from Manchester and all over now have sort of recognised it exists and have been coming out. During the pandemic, it was like Blackpool at times. You couldn't believe it. But it's been absolutely a pillar of a source of like sanity for me to be able to just get out. And I got addicted to hiking. I get addicted to everything. So that was like the replacement for a lot of habits that I'd probably, had evolved in my life through the lifestyle of the street artist. For me, it was very much part of a problem, shall I say, that was like growing out of control. But hiking became like a healthy replacement. It also gave me a lot of time to reflect and think and work through varying things in my life. So it was quite a chapter of discovery. Some pretty other wild things happened. So like I realized that I was in love with one of my best friends who happened to be living in America, and had no idea when I would see her ever again, ever, because pandemic and all of that stuff. Anyway, eventually we concocted a bit of a plan and ran away to Mexico and got married so that we could get into America and so that we could see each other. So that was mental, and everyone thought I'd lost my mind, which is debatable. There's a chance, but yeah. So my journey, that's kind of like the framework of I suppose that was quite influential in a lot of ways of, you know, like where my life has sort of been leading and the turns it's taken.
Quite an eventful few months, eh?
Yeah.
You know, I wish you congratulations on social media, but congratulations almost in person. You know, we'll meet in person at some point, but you know, is the second phase of congratulations there. And do you feel like you've got through this whole process achieved a bit more balance? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm very much a work in progress, and I would never profess to say that I'm there completely with anything. I don't know if anyone is, but I'm living the most authentically that I've ever lived, and I think for me that's saying something, because I've always lived authentically, but I think there's been a lot of things that I've been holding back and repressing and deliberately keeping myself incredibly occupied, you know, in life, whether it be, you know, in certain relationship dynamics, or whether it be just by, you know, like be getting addicted to things, or, you know, like overworking. So I think really having that time and space, you know, was absolutely pivotal in order for me to really figure out a lot of things around, you know, myself, whether it be my gender or whether it be like my wants and needs in life, which it's weird because not, you know, like you think you know what you want, or you think you've got an idea, but it can sometimes be based on just ideas from the past. You've not even had a chance to reconnect with yourself and figure out where you are, you know. And I realized I've been doing that for a lot of my life, and the only way I've been communicating really was through my art, which I know I'm not alone in that. A lot of artists communicate, you know, a lot of their inner child comes out in their art, and that's what makes it so interesting and fascinating. But I never really sort of joined any dots per se. I'd just create and not really think about, you know, what was going on internally. And that's quite an addictive feeling, because it removes you from reality in some respects. So yeah.
And we're kind of looking at sort of hopefully, you know, emerging from the pandemic. And it was one of your posts fairly recently when you said it was, you know, a bit like coming out of a cocoon for yourself, emerging as Jay as well. So, you know, how I suppose talk me through that process of, you know, just introducing Jay to the world, introducing your new self or your existing self, but newly realized to the world.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, that it's you say new self and old self, and actually really in many respects they're one and the same, I suppose. And I must admit, I'm very, very fucking lucky. You know, I'm in quite a privileged position. I worked really, really hard to get to this point, and it means that I've been able to afford to pay myself through therapy. And therapy is for everyone. There's a lot of stigma around therapy. People don't like to sort of, you know, earn it per se, because there's so much stigma, and everyone goes, oh God, they're in therapy, is everything, you know. And that can, you know, that can be quite a thing in its own right. But I mean, I'm probably about like a year and a half deep in, and you know, so I'll probably be in it for, you know, quite a while, because it's become integral to my well-being. And you know, I've gone like 37 years of my life, you know, with varying levels and varying degrees of mental health issues that I think I ignored. But I had the perfect excuses to ignore them. You know, it was always either someone else's mental health issues are more important than my own, or or I was just this crazy artist who was just like getting wasted and whatever. You know, there's always a perfect excuse to just hide behind a whole manner of things. But pandemic's kind of spending a lot of time alone. You know, I live alone. And within that isolation and solitude, you can't really hide from yourself. You know, and I know I'm not alone in that. I think a lot of people have really switched on to the idea of well-being and, you know, figuring out their own needs. So one of the things I've been doing, I guess, is quite a lot of reflective work around, you know, working on my inner child and working on some of those things that have been always present in my life, but I've never known what to do with them, or even I've pushed them so hard out that it's just caused a massive internal conflict over the years. And so, interestingly enough, there's a reason why I've got this set up with a light shining on it, as if it doesn't already look like some sort of spirit guide.
Amazing, Mr.
You know, like, yeah. So I was invited to be part of an exhibition which will be taking place next year. I can't talk about too much because I don't think it's out there yet.
Okay.
But this piece is going into that, and the thematics around it are vaguely the group show. It's vaguely around like how men are depicted in art, which is quite a different one. You know, like men as objects. You know, we look at the feminine form in art a lot, and so that's the sort of angle that the curators have gone for. But I decided, well, I wanted to bring in one of my best friends, and Samo is like a trans activist, you know, a fucking wonderful guy. And so I was like, right, he's gonna be my subject matter. So he went and did an amazing photo shoot, got some great reference material. I was having a little chat with my sister. We managed to, probably at some point in the pandemic when we were allowed to see each other for that week or whatever, we managed to like meet up. And I was like, I was bouncing ideas around about this painting, and she was just like, what are you doing, Mirror? And I was like, holy shit. All right, Gemma. Like she's always just like one step ahead of me and is dead like whatever about it. So I was like, great. Managed to get this like mirror off of Marsden Marketplace, whatever, for like a tenner or something. But what's weird about it is this mirror, it's like a wood version of one that I had as a kid.
Right.
I had like a plastic version of that, like from Argos or something, on my wall. So I was like, okay, whatever. Like I feel like drawn to it and connected already. Started the painting, and from the very beginning stages, it was a bit weird because you're seeing yourself, you know, coming through this oil and all this weird. It's like distorting you, and you have to kind of really get sort of comfortable with seeing yourself through the painting, and you know, getting lost in a painting and then suddenly catching your own sort of like, it was all a bit weird. As I was going through the process, I was thinking a lot about Samo and his journey, and also relating a lot to it and thinking about my own experiences in life as a kid, from being very, very young, and a lot of gender confusion, I would say, that was causing animosity, you know, in my family. I suppose in the 80s it wasn't quite, you know, there was still sort of a bit cookie cutter ideals around gender and stuff, and
not the most forward,
you know, yeah, I think it was challenging for my parents at the time. For, you know, like I was never comfortable in, you know, the roles that of this tiny little girl that whatever. So I was kind of doing a lot of thinking, and then going and doing therapy, and then hiking by myself, and then coming back and spending another 100 hours on this fucking thing, and it was just like, oh. And eventually I just kind of had this huge wave of realization. And it's not that I haven't been around like the community. You know, actually Leeds had an incredible underground queer community, and they're still there, but like way back in the day, you know, I knew quite a lot of trans people. I actually had a lot of exes who were trans, but thereby lays another, you know, story, because I think it was always like their thing. You know, I clearly had a connection with it, but I was never able to, you know, it was almost like there was too much fear for me to relate, but I needed to be near it. And there was something that was connecting me to it all the time. So yeah, like during this mammoth creation, I guess that's when sort of started really questioning my own gender identity. And the first step for me was going, okay, like my name was quite heavily gendered. And so I just thought, well, I'll just change the vowel or whatever, you know, I'll change it from an O to an A. People will find that easy enough. And that was like the first step, more or less, that and coming out to my wife, who was, that wasn't like by any means a coincidence, because she like unconditionally showed me love, you know. So it was very like I was afraid at times, but also the way that she handled it and the way that she accepted it was like above and beyond. And I knew she would, but it was so pivotal for me to go through that, I guess, and feel that acceptance despite that. You know, like I was so worried about what I'd go through. So it was all, I guess it was all just like a huge amount of, you know, moments that all just seemed to happen around each other. And I was in touch with Sama quite a bit, you know, at the time, like pre all of this, like all the way through the pandemic, we were sort of like ringing each other and freaking out a lot, you know, and just being like, dude, what the fuck's going on? Like, well, the world's fucked, you know, stuff like that. And I guess, yeah, so I knew that I'd got good people around me, and had the time and the space for myself. And I think that's key. You know, I think that's something that anyone and everyone can learn from, you know, giving yourself that time and the space and saying, do you know what, I deserve that time and space, not to fill it with everything else and everyone else's problems, which is literally, I was for a while a beacon for that. I still struggle to not do that. I'd prefer to look at everyone else and help everybody else. And, you know, but now I'm like well in the throes of practicing like being okay, because it makes you sort of a better support, you know what I mean?
and how have you found people have been, because you had your sort of, you know, your sort of your inner circle to start with, where you could be comfortable, and then, you know, you're, you know, out there in the wide world and painting some mega murals as Nomad Clan as well, and, you know, in traditionally, you know, some sort of working class parts of the north as well. So how have you found people have, you know, sort of received you, so to speak?
I think being a muralist has made it somewhat easier for me, possibly. I'd say that to begin with, I was fucking terrified. But I was throwing myself from one extreme of being in my safe little haven in this village of not, you know, no one was going out the streets. Were like, it's like, you know, zombie apocalypse, like completely empty. To then eventually, when I was able to go and see my partner, you know, I'd be in LA, and things were very different there in the pandemic. But also, it's quite a liberal place to some degree. But you know, I was going through a lot of like struggles at that time because I didn't know how I was going to be received. I hadn't come out to my parents. I don't think I'd come out to my sister at that point either. So there was a lot. I was holding a lot of it and actually leaning a lot on my partner more than I should, really. But I decided this last time I was out there, you know, I painted in downtown, and it was really like right next to Skid Row. But I mean, that was an awesome experience. I mean, I probably pushed myself a little bit too hard to paint my first, you know, solo wall in like God knows how many years, and like in the absolute extreme of being alone on the moors to like being like surrounded by chaos in downtown LA. So there's a lot going on. Yeah, it's a bit bipolar, a bit of a yo-yo effect. But weirdly, at that point, I was really struggling to leave the house. Like the dysphoria really started to kick in because I suddenly was very, very aware that I wouldn't, you know, I was just going to keep being read as female, and like I wasn't sure what to do about that. And it was starting to make me, you know, it gone from being something I hadn't looked at to suddenly something that was making me incredibly uncomfortable and like not comfortable going outside again. And this is something that I've had like flow in and out of my life, and it used to affect me. Like if I was starting college or anything else, I just fundamentally never felt like I could fit into a place and was absolutely felt like an alien. And that's just, that's something that was always there, and I didn't know what it was. Interestingly enough, it took me getting my ass back over here, being by myself, not being so dependent on my partner, and getting back into the saddle of work and going to places like Hull, St Helens, even Coventry, and like Doncaster, all these places. And I think because I'm from the north, I don't know, but because of what we were doing, painting murals, we were just well received the whole time. And actually, I didn't receive any shit from anybody. One of the most interesting things that's happened so far was when we were in Parr, which is the area in St Helens that we did the two gable ends. One young lad, I'd say he was probably about 25. He looked hard as nails, like he looked like he was, you wouldn't mess with him. He came walking over and he was like, "Oh, I've heard this is a non-binary person," pointing to the bloke that I'd painted on the wall. I was like, "What?" And I sort of had a moment of like, "Oh shit, where is this going to go?" And he was like, "Well, yeah." I said, "Who's told you that?" And he said, "Oh, everyone's been saying it around here." And I thought, "Oh, fucking hell." And when you're just holding on to like, anyway, he was like, I was like, do you like it though? And he was like, yeah, it's sound, yeah, love it, yeah, nice one, and just like walked off. It's just like, fucking hell, man, of all the things. But the fact that he knew what non-binary even was blew my mind. The awareness and the visibility around trans and non-binary has really improved.
It's definitely improved. I think there's still a lot of confusion about it still as well. So can you explain it to, like, for instance, if someone is just like, imagine they've like been in another world for like the last 20 years and they don't understand this at all, that this is a thing. How would you kind of just explain it in a really simple way to help someone understand?
Okay, well, I guess first is the notion that is the idea that gender is fluid. So, some people will call it a spectrum, and that's maybe an easier way for them to understand it. But no two trans people are the same, I would say. And you have like a whole plethora of like incredibly different ways that people live, in their own skin, in whichever way that makes them feel comfortable. So I guess I came out as non-binary, which means I sort of don't associate necessarily as either female or male. That was how I came out. So genderless would be one way of looking at it. Or like the sort of, in Native American cultures, they call it like two-spirit. So sometimes it's like you feel both, So like there's a whole plethora of different ways, but I'd say that for me it's kind of a bit of a journey, and the further into the journey I'm going, the more I am identifying as, I guess, trans masculine, which means that there is a chance that I'm going to be moving into, the realms of transitioning to male, which I haven't actually said I've kind of said to my parents-ish earlier this year, but I'm taking it slowly. I'm taking it very slowly because I have a lot of, I've been doing a lot of internal work, and I need to make sure that, like, in my own time, that everything feels as it should. So at this point in time, I'm connecting very much with my inner child, who's definitely a repressed little boy and always was. And so I'm trying to honor that, but at the same time, I've lived, 30 however many years identifying as female and experiencing life in that way, and I feel very attached to that, and I feel like I've got a lot of female energy as well, so I'm having to just kind of like balance it out.
Because it often gets conflated. I kind of think of some discussions I've kind of organized on the radio and like my day job, and then we'll get texts come through and people conflate gender and someone's physical sex with being the same thing, when actually gender is kind of more on the identity side of things, whereas physical sex is that's like, the, for want of a better description, the bits that you're born with. So
yeah, so I guess like your birth gender, or like the gender you're assigned when you're born, based upon whether it's your biology, because obviously remember there are intersex people, and I don't know how we're supposed to categorize. Gender is very much a construct in some respect, but we have to remember that what's in your pants doesn't always define who you are inside. And so I would say it's very much like internal. People get a bit obsessive about, yeah, but what were you when you were born, like biologically, like what's going on in your underwear? And it's like, whoa, like I don't know what's going on in your underwear, like it's that thing of like but what I will say is that trans men are men. The notion is, if you ask any sort of mental health expert or anyone in the field, they will tell you that they're literally born in the wrong bodies. And often, that's very difficult for people to comprehend, because it doesn't seem like, well, how can that happen? You're just who you are, you're just what's going on there. But that's absolutely not the case. And it's always been that people, like if you look at ancient civilizations, trans and non-binary people have always been around. They've been treated differently. I'd say that in the West, it's demonized, it's been monsterized by Hollywood at times, whereas in other cultures, it's actually celebrated, or, they're deemed to be like these spiritual, shamanic, enlightened humans.
Two-spirit, I hadn't, that's a new one, I must admit. Is that this is something, so in Native American culture, this has been around for a long, long time, I take it?
Forever, yeah. And this is it, like once you start researching into it, it's absolutely fascinating, it really is. And what we're looking at really, again, like anything else, is the notion of everything must have a place, everything must be labelled, and oppression and varying systems. And that's it, it gets a bit dark and it gets a bit depressing. A lot of people have lost their lives over this stuff. And so it's, if it's something that, I will say, like, for people who get genuinely sort of angered or freaked out or anything else by it, then do your research and read, because that's really where you're going to get your education from. Watch documentaries. I mean, we're living in a time now where there's more representation. There's incredible informative and educational documentaries about incredible people, who really, really can explain it a lot better than I can. I feel almost like I'm not new to the scene, but like I'm not an expert, you know what I mean? I'm very much I'm still in my learning stages. And what I do know is I have a lot to be thankful for, because I'm in a position where I'm safe enough. Whereas a lot of people, a lot of, Black trans women have lost their lives, for me to be able to feel safe enough to come out and to talk to you about things like this, and that's so, like, I think in these journeys, it's about education, it's about awareness, and it's about saying it's okay to explore this stuff, and it exists and it's valid and it's always been there, and I do believe that, like, things like social media and the internet and whatever have really helped people connect. I've found my tribe, so to speak. I don't feel as isolated.
Yeah, there's every community out there, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I suppose a lot of what you're saying is to do with society, really, isn't it? And like, and you could go very deep on this in terms of, like, well, what, who decided at one point that girls wear pink and boys wear blue, that we'll start the working day at 9, we'll finish at 5,
right, exactly.
We'll have weekends, like all of these different, it's like, who decides all of this stuff really? So then it's like, well, can you undecide it then? You know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's very much, there's a lot of constructs, I believe, in this world, and anything that's a construct is generally there for a reason. It serves somebody. And also, you know, fear is a real motivator for some people. When we look at things like racism and oppression and everything else, it's like it's born of fear. And this is the point, like, if you look way back in the history of LGBTQI communities, like, it's, you know, they've always been persecuted, you know, at the hands of people who feared them, you know. And like, I go back to saying Hollywood again, because really, like, there's length, you know, go right back, same with racism, you know, like, feature films portrayed, you know, the visibility around, say, being a queer was out there through films, and they were often, like, you know, predatory or like insane, you know, like psychotic, you know, murderous, you know, all this. And it's like, holy shit, like, at what point, you know, did someone decide? And it shaped people. Films do shape people. Media shapes people.
Cartoon, you know, even thinking about it, you know, lots of sort of cartoon depictions of whether it's, you know, things with sort of overtly, you know, sort of racist overtones, or, you know, homophobic, or generally that was accepted at the time, I guess, but like, why, I don't know. But do you feel that, like, you know, having been able to channel this into your art is like kind of a blessing, really, to be able to sort of communicate in that way, and to also, you know, like you said, with the painting in the background there, kind of working through your own stuff by putting it out there as well?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been drawn to painting portraits of androgynous, gender ambiguous people. I in some respects, I've done it at times because I want, this is going to sound strange, but I want lots of people to be able to identify with a mural that's got a character in it. And some people will see that character as male, or some people will see that character as female. It happens a lot, especially when I paint androgynous people. And, you know, we'll get the people write up what something's about. And I'm like, wow, that's brilliant. Because actually, like, that was, you know, someone who identifies as female, but you perceive them to be male because of this, because of it being an industry thing, or some, you know, like Peaky Blinders style. It's like, no, women were in industry, and actually that's an androgynous female wearing that get up. And, you know, I kind of I liked to covertly put stuff in there, especially in certain places like in Northern Ireland, where at the time I think they still had some terrible legislations around LGBTQ human rights. So, you know, religion comes into all of that, I suppose. But, like, you know, it's kind of, it speaks to people. It speaks to people from the community, which is important, because it's like, we see you, you're represented, you're valued, you're here, sort of thing. But also it speaks to everybody as well. And Nomad's really good at sort of going and doing that in sort of covert and not so covert ways at times. But it's definitely, for me, it's always been about finding ways of communicating. I guess I just didn't, you know, I've always expressed myself through my art. And, like, the thing is, like, I could look at my art objectively and be like, that's what that's about. Yeah, because I'm into that and that's cool. But what I didn't see, it was myself often. You know, like, I didn't, like, separating the artist from the art is like a strange thing to do. And in my head, I guess that's what I just was like, oh no, this is just the thing that I do. But actually I was speaking to myself often. It's only like in retrospect, looking back to, like, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, I'm like, oh my God, like, this was about this, and holy shit, I wonder if this, and I remember what was happening, you know, in my life at that time, and I clearly felt completely stuck, and this is really depressing. And, you know, like, a lot of my stuff's been quite dark and heavy. So yeah.
I think I'm just picturing, like, one of these big, you know, like in CSI when they've got the board and it's like a bit of string links to that bit and then that bit and that bit. You're like piecing it all together, and then you can just stand back and say, right, that's it. There's the bigger picture now.
It's me. Yeah.
It was there all along.
Yeah, exactly. Holy shit, that's quite that's quite a sort of philosophical statement. But I think there's something in it. There's definitely something in it, and it's like I say, everything's a bit of a journey, and the art has been a catalyst. But then again, so is therapy, so is this relationship I'm in, so is, like so many things. And if you let it, life will kind of, pull you towards if you don't fight it and push it out and whatever else, you kind of suddenly things will click in line and make sense. And you start to see all kinds of patterns in your life and in stuff. So I suppose like it's almost like everything just all culminated all of a sudden in one, and rather than it being a chaos, messy explosion, which I think often my life was up to that point, it was like an aha moment, and I was doing things differently, and I had the clarity, the mental clarity to be able to look at it and understand it. So
and in a way, do you kind of value some of those experiences that have been a bit more difficult in your life, that because I suppose this is part of why who you are today, really?
Yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, I wouldn't change. Yeah, I wouldn't change it, because if I changed anything, like you say, I wouldn't be who I am today. And where I'm at the moment, it's really been a big journey of self-acceptance and actually like being able to value me as a person. And I'm kind of getting to that point, which I never thought I'd be able to really say, because there was a lot of self-loathing and of course there was, because I was rejecting huge sides of me. And it's like, as I've kind of allowed these things that I felt guilt and shame about to actually breathe, I've felt like a lot of massive chunks of my mental health issues have sort of eased off a bit, and I have the capacity to handle things that I once don't think I could have. So like, I wouldn't change a fucking thing. And also, I don't know that I would be the weird ass street artist that I am today, to be honest. I might have a normal job somewhere doing something else, like, which hell no, like that was never going to be for me. So I feel like the massive drive to sort of get somewhere with the street art and travel and experience life, like free myself from it sounds terrible, but from the north, which I love because I've come back here and I want to be here, but like to as a younger person, I never dreamt that I would be able to travel off the back of something that I fucking love, let alone spray painting big walls, like that just wasn't in my head. So like, I wouldn't have worked as hard at it, I don't think, because I thought that was going to be the be all and end all of everything. But once you're there and a pandemic hits, suddenly you realise, there's actually lots of other things going on.
Yeah, and I have to, and very selfishly, I'm just going to say, in a way, it's kind of good that you've not been able to travel quite as much, because you're smashing out the murals in the UK at the minute. I mean, whether it's that huge mural in Coventry, or the one you've just completed in Doncaster, the work in St Helens, you've been busy, and I feel like you're just like clicking, you know what I mean? You just seem to be in like a really good place artistically, expressing yourself really well, and very effectively.
It feels great. It feels really good to be back. Like me and Ayla were saying this the other day. We were like, would we have ever, number one, would we have ever stopped if there hadn't been a pandemic? We probably would have ended up dead, honestly, or in rehabilitation, whatever. But like, like, would we have had so many murals in the north? Would we have felt like we're bringing something back that's like meaningful and having impact in people's lives? And the projects we've been taking on have actually been really significant projects, not just a bit of whatever comes in. It's like, you know, that they were quite long, well thought about projects that engaged the community, that really took in. That's always been at the ethos of Nomad Clan anyway. We've always sort of tried to integrate in, you know, like bits of heritage, bits of like, you know, issues, local issues that might be happening in whatever way we could, and imparting bits of stuff that we hear, you know, like that people tell you about their little stories, and we're like, oh, we'll do a nod for that. We'll put a certain, you know, pin badge or a certain flower or whatever. And now it's like we go in and we meet the community. Like in PAR, we spent quite a bit of time talking with the community, working with the community, running workshops, getting an idea of what the core issues were there and what people are proud of and what people want for the future of PAR. And that basically literally dictated the murals for them completely, which was such a beautiful process, because sometimes you get lost in muralism, in street art. You start producing work that's for a client.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we were always about the public art side of things and connecting people. So this time we've just been on that stage completely, but putting that little bit extra care into it because we're here, you know, and it's working really nicely, and we're really enjoying it. It's not like I'm not sat here going, oh God, I wish we were like, you know, bouncing from that place and then going flying over there and this. I mean, at times it's like, you know, it's all fond memories and I wouldn't change any of it. It's been wicked, but it's been really nice to be a little bit more grounded, a little bit more Northern Hemisphere as well, and to see things happening around here and how appreciative people have been. You know, that's really what we do it for. So
yeah, I think it's great. And I think, you know, for instance, when I saw you were painting in Par, I was like, oh, right, okay, that's literally never somewhere I would have thought that I'm going to go there and have a look at some street art, but you've gone there, you've connected with the community and given them something which is really significant to the area. Did you, you know, did it feel like something really new and kind of exciting in that respect, you know, and the fact that it, you know, it's not like a big city or somewhere like one of the more obvious places, for example, where you know, street art might take place?
Yeah, I think we really got a taste for, you know, if I'm going to go right back here, blast from the past, we really got a taste for doing odd little northern towns when Blackburn Open Wall Space started, because we were on that first lineup when Hayley Walsh ran it, and there wasn't anything like that there at that time, really. There might have been an odd bit of graph down canal or something, but there was no big muralism. So there was Lucy McLaughlin, Anatomics, Nomad Clan. And it really felt like the start of something, and there was something really beautiful about that. It seemed to have a real impact in the community, and people were suddenly quite proud and celebratory of like Blackburn, which I'm not saying that people aren't generally, but I think sometimes there can be a little bit of apathy or a little bit of, you know, whatever. But I think we got a taste for it then, and we've done quite a few places that have not really had murals, and I think it's probably based off our portfolio that we've managed to become a bit of a key to the door in places where they're a bit concerned about what does graffiti mean, you know, like, oh God, it's a spray can, are we suddenly going to have like you know, like graph everywhere and all this stuff? But it's like, I think our portfolio eases that anxiety somewhat, and it makes it accessible to older generations as well, who might be, you know, more likely to protest about it going up. So you know, like our work's fairly accessible and readable on a whole like plethora of levels, and as a result we're often a key to the door in places that don't have any examples of this going on. So I think, you know, for us also, like doing Rochdale Uprising, that was a great thing, you know, for us to actually run a mural festival. It had that. I know there was some street art bits and bobs or like a history of it long ago, but there wasn't anything majorly in the town centre that was changing the shape of anything. So it does feel good to feel like you're having a positive impact somewhere and helping people feel proud again of their areas that they live in.
And what about the? I mean, the wall in Doncaster was or is big, and also like a bit of a challenging one as well. Really, how was that?
Uh, I think I'm still trying to recover from it in some respects, and in other respects, I'm surprised that I'm even able to have a conversation with you.
Right.
Like at the time when doing a wall for 4 weeks would have absolutely annihilated us, and we've kind of recovered over the weekend, and now we're sort of back planning for the next phase where we've got some stuff going on in Wigan, the Great Northern Tour.
There we go.
But yeah, Doncaster was epic, and it was ambitious, and it was in planning for 2 years. So like really the pandemic kind of just kept stopping it from happening, or whatever. So it was like the project, it got cancelled. It got held up twice. So it just felt like it was never going to happen, and it just feels amazing that we've finished it, because it was like one of those overly ambitious hell walls. It's the only way I can describe it. So there's like fucking 20 trees down one side of it, and like the logistics were a nightmare, and the brick had never been treated, so it's like so absorbent. And when you're just like, oh my god. But yeah, and it was colossal. Like it just seemed to keep going, and every time we'd sort of get over one hurdle, some other hurdle would present itself. And to be honest, you have to be prepared for that on some level as street artists. But I think like Nomad Clan are really prepared for it, because we've had some real booby traps of walls in the past. And so we always like a good challenge, but I think this was the moment where we're like, right, enough's enough now. We just want a nice smooth wall, please. Next. I think we've proved our worth on that last one. And there was a moment where I thought Hayley was going to be stuck in a tree for the rest of her life, and you're just like, this is it. I don't know what's going on.
Oh no, and another real kind of heritage piece as well, isn't it? So, and just kind of talk me through the mural, if you will.
So it started off with a lot of research, and again, like Doncaster has like a great underground art scene, but there's not so much visibility for muralism. There's little bits sporadically on hoardings every now and then that's been there forever by the looks of it, but you can see that there's not been anything until Art of Protest have come along and they started to facilitate some walls. So we were like, maybe we're like the second wall, maybe, I don't know, we might be the third wall, but obviously there's absolutely colossal thing opposite the train station. So we did our usual, we did our research and started and there was a guy who carved this incredible ornate house. He lived in a sandstone house and he carved it all. This was in the Victorian era. And when I say carved it, it was like, holy shit, what the fuck is this? So I found these pictures and it was there till the 70s, but it started to crumble and erode and it sort of collapsed, was beginning to become dangerous. But people were protesting to keep it because it was so ornate and insane. So that was the starting point. We wanted to make lots of like stone sort of statues, I guess, in this overgrown, lost, forgotten garden. So it's looking at the past. So like Doncaster's most famous bits and bobs, which is obviously like horse racing, the coal mining, which is actually my granddad on that piece. He was from Doncaster and he was a coal miner who worked in Bentley. So I got his memoirs, so it's kind of reflecting some of his stories from when he worked in the pits with the pit ponies. So then as it moves around, you've got, the horses. I'm trying to remember. It's so big. There's so many elements to it as well. It's like, God, there's more. And then we've got like a nod to, I guess, the Windrush era, Caribbean heritage within Doncaster by ways and means of a doctor, a female person of colour with an NHS badge. So it's a bit of a shout because we were mid-pandemic as well, so it was really impossible to stop pulling in elements that were really visible at that time. And that was like a sort of nod to like inclusivity as well, because it was like, right, hang on a minute, you know, this is quite a significant moment in Doncaster's history. Why would we overlook that? You know, if we're going to represent the future and positive energy, let's do this. As it turns around corner, we've got, there's like the castle. It's a bit like trippy, I suppose. But that's when you start getting behind the trees. That's when the nightmares began. Then we've got like, you know, a nod to the aviation. We've got a nod to the trains. And everything's sort of overgrown because we wanted to try and set the trees into the piece and work with what was there. There's a lot of like rose bushes, obviously white rose of Yorkshire, so couldn't help it. So it's kind of really like an eclectic piece that's very much about the past, but very much about like now as well, sort of honouring the past, but looking to the future. And I guess we wanted to pull quite a bit of greenery into it because at that time as well, it was like wanting to remind people that for well-being purposes, for mental health purposes, we've all relied quite heavily on, you know, nature and the environment. So it's very much a 2020, but done in a slightly apocalyptic Nomad clan style, because it's like obviously they're all like old relics of stuff. So there's always that tinge, but it's very dramatic. There's a lot of rain as well, and bits of stuff happening in there.
No, it looks fantastic. I really look forward to seeing it in the flesh. You know, some murals, pictures can never really do it justice. I feel like the pictures are, and by the way, the pictures are amazing, but you need to see it in the flesh. You know, I think. Is it one that you're sort of? Are you quite proud of that one?
I think so. I've not really had time to look at it properly. You know, like I felt like there was days where we were packing up, and I was like, did anyone take a picture? And we've had a right team of people involved, and it's been great. But I was like, you know, to Face Street Art Atlas, I was like, did you get any pictures? I don't know what I've just painted. What have I spent the day doing? Like, what's happening? You know, it was just every day. It started getting a bit Groundhog Day. It's a really busy road as well. It's like 6 lanes of traffic going under a tunnel. Loads of people have them. Them like really loud exhaust, you know, like the ones
yeah,
and all that.
The look at me exhausts.
It's crazy, like just really, really loud. And loads of ambulances. There's like a police station there, so it was just sirens constantly. It was just chaos. Like
not on the senses. I
think I went deaf a bit.
Oh, God. And do you ever? This is very. Do you like keep a count on how many cans? Because like that, I guess that's a lot of cans of spray paint you've used. I mean, it must be. But like, do you keep a count?
Not this time. I think this time we were just so overwhelmed by the process that we were just putting empties in places, not knowing even what was empty anymore. You know, when you're just like, I don't know. Probably should have had someone, you know, clock that. We could probably work it out from what's left. We've donated most of that to the art studios, the Fringe round the corner, who were letting us store all our stuff. But we had a really lovely assistant on from Donny as well, this lass called Tasha, who like we were sort of showing the ropes, and you know, like basically we're just really hoping that it's going to open the doors for opportunities, you know, for artists, local artists in Doncaster, you know, and for them to consider muralism as a way and means. Yeah,
and I mean having it front and centre there as well, really, and you can't miss it. So
no, you can't. you literally can't. It's again, like I say, I think it'll be one of those ones that like, when I go back there, then I'll be like seeing it in more of the eyes of the viewer, as opposed to going, I need to finish that. What's that bit? You know, that's sort of ridiculous. And it's like, I would have done that differently, or you know, just that overly analytical brain. But I get that now. Like when I go to Leeds and see Athena, I'm like, holy shit, that's actually pretty good. I didn't, you know, like. But I mean, that's been years, and it's taken a while for me to see it as it is, if you know what I mean.
Stands up so well, that one as well. It's just, I still love it. Just whenever, especially if I'm going up to Newcastle, just past it. You see it for about 10 seconds on the train, but it's a great 10 seconds, you know.
Yeah, it still looks pretty fresh, that, to be honest. And like Leeds definitely gets the weather, you know, and the wind, but
yeah,
you know, it's as fresh as the day it was painted. So
no,
that's
fair play.
something.
And I'm sure the one in Doncaster, it's bound to, you know, to inspire, you know, many people, I'm sure, to, you know, whether it's to take up, you know, a bit of art muralism, or just to kind of learn about it a bit more, and, you know, or even learn about the local area as well. I think there's a lot of different levels there, isn't there? Which is this is the Nomad Clan way.
That's one thing I will say. A lot of people from Doncaster were incredibly like, I kind of wish that we'd held some sort of massive gathering pre doing the mural, because everyone was so up on their knowledge of Donny. It's like, you know, what you should have done is this, and like everyone had like ideas and, you know, like really specific things of, you know, because Doncaster's just got this huge history. It's insane. Like, well, that, I mean, that ended up being the phrase that we'd use, like, we couldn't do everything on here. You know, it's a big wall, but it's not that big.
You would need to build an extension, wouldn't you? Like, just keep it going.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so next up, so is Wigan next up, or is that kind of, that's it, like sort of in the discussion stages, or?
No, I mean, it's pretty much in. I mean, there's still discussion, but we've got dates. We've sort of set with that, so that'll be happening before the end of October, if not the middle of October. So I think that'll be probably one of our last ones of the year as a Nomad, and then I'm going back over to the States for a bit. So yeah, but we've got a couple of other things on Bubble, you know, that we've been working on throughout the year. Sort of some collaborations with some, you know, companies. So there'll be some little releases of interesting bits and bobs, but then it all starts again next year. It's all chaos from this. But yeah, I think we kind of felt like we would be totally finished off by Doncaster this year. We thought it would be the killer, but I think we're both surprised at our energy levels.
That's good. That's good. And the group show, I know you can't say too much about it. Is that knocking into next year now then?
Yeah, that's happening in Berlin beginning of next year. So I've got some bits and bobs to sort out for that, and there should be a little bit of a film about the piece and like what, you know, what's been happening with me as an artist, but also a bit about Samo, and, you know, his voice will be in it as well. So that'll be with Buckago. I've also got I've got a commission in Leeds to do as well, which is going to be fun with E Street Arts and Marching Out Together, which is like Leeds United's LGBTQ fan club or whatever. So there's like a bit of a amalgamation. So I'll be painting something for them on the front of E Street Art Studios.
And are you still, I mean, Sad Magnet, are you still in the, you know, concocting things in the, you know, music studio as well?
Yeah. I mean, there's not enough hours in the day, and although, like, I seem to get a mad amount of shit done, I never seem to have enough time. And so, yeah, I've been writing a lot of music to go with, you know, films of the murals, so it's like another add-on to what I'm doing. But I was like, this is the great thing about my wife is collabs, so they facilitate murals and stuff over in LA, but they also make really awesome art films, like the Icy and Sot one, which is actually in the Bristol Museum, you know, the big TV screen of the burning house stuff. So she does all this kind of thing. So, but we don't tend to take it like serious, like that's really us playing and getting creative together, but it's just so much fun, and it keeps it fun for me and for her. It's like passion stuff, you know. So but I'm hoping I'm going to try and drag her in on the Leeds wall, because I think she's going to be over in the UK. She's going to be in Yorkshire, so we'll definitely be playing. But yeah, I've been scoring bits of music for these films. It's like having another I don't know, something else going on your palette of stuff, you know, you can start to talk and communicate in other ways, and I think there's something really nice about that, and I love it. Like, I love making music, but it's always like, if I get the time to do it sort of vibe. The painting always seems to come first, to be honest, in my livelihood, I suppose. So.
Yeah, fair play. Well, great to talk. We've covered a lot of.
We have. I need to breathe.
All right. Well, thank you very much indeed.
Oh, thank you.